The knock at midnight. Elias Boone had not spoken more than a dozen words to another living soul in the last 7 years. His world was the mountain, the groan of pines in the wind, the call of elk echoing across ravines, the steady crunch of snow beneath his boots. At 42, Elias had become as weathered as the ridges around him. His beard was thick with gray, his hands calloused from wood and stone, and his eyes, once soft as a farm boy's, were now hard as flint. Once, long ago, he had been a husband. Once, he had been a father for 3 short months before fever stole his infant daughter and grief stole his wife. That was 12 winters past. Since then, he had shut the door on towns, churches, and all the noisy, quarrelsome people who filled them. He needed no one. He wanted no one. But the mountain, as cruel as it was, never stopped surprising a man. That night the storm came down heavy, sweeping through the Black Elk Range with winds that howled like wolves. Snow piled against his cabin door, and the timbers creaked with each gust. Elias had just finished stoking the fire when he heard it, 3 faint taps against the wood. At first, he thought it was ice breaking loose. But then it came again, softer, deliberate. A knock. His hand went instantly to the rifle above the hearth. No one came up this far in winter. No one, unless desperate or dangerous. Elias moved slow, boots crunching on the dirt floor. He drew back the latch and pulled open the door. There, shivering in the snow, stood a woman. Her hair was long, black as a raven's wing, whipped wild by the storm. She clutched a threadbare blanket around her shoulders, but the wind tore at it cruelly. Blood stained her sleeve, spreading down her arm. Behind her were 3 children. 2 boys stood stiffly, their faces pale, eyes wide with hunger. The older boy might have been 10, his jaw set in a way too old for his years. The younger was perhaps 7, holding tightly to the hand of the littlest one, a girl no more than 4. The little girl leaned against her brother, shivering violently. "Please," the woman whispered, her lips trembling with cold. Her English was halting but clear, laced with a soft Chinese accent. "Please, can we stay? One night. My children, no fire, no food. Just one night." Elias stared, his chest tightening. The mountain hardened a man. It told him to keep to himself, to trust no stranger. Yet as he looked into the woman's face, pale but resolute despite her injury, something inside him stirred, something he thought had long turned to stone. "You're hurt," he said gruffly. "Where'd you come from?" Her knees nearly buckled. "Wagon. Men attacked. We ran. Please." Her voice cracked, nearly swallowed by the wind. "Just one night." The little girl whimpered. The eldest boy straightened as if ready to fight Elias himself, his small shoulders squared with the weight of protecting his family. Elias Boone had not asked for company. He had not asked for memories of another time when his cabin had been filled with laughter and a woman's voice humming by the fire. Yet here they stood, 4 fragile souls against the fury of the storm. He exhaled hard, muttering under his breath, "Damn fool thing to do." Then, louder, "One night. No more." He stepped aside. The children hurried in, nearly dragging their mother across the threshold. Elias shut the door against the shrieking wind and turned to watch them huddle close to the fire. The woman sank down, her face awash in relief. Her wounded arm trembled as she tried to keep hold of the blanket around her children. For the first time in years, Elias Boone's cabin was no longer silent. And though he told himself he'd regret it come morning, a part of him already knew, one night would never be enough. The burden of strangers. The morning broke white and still. Snow glittered on the high ridges, so bright it hurt the eyes. Elias rose early, splitting wood to quiet the questions in his mind. By the time he returned, smoke curled lazily from the chimney and the smell of porridge greeted him inside. The eldest boy, Wei, stood over the pot, clumsy with the ladle. His little brother, June, crouched beside him, proudly feeding their sister Lien spoonfuls that dripped down her chin. Elias frowned. "Didn't say you could ransack my food." Wei turned, face solemn. "Sorry, mister. We were hungry. Mama is weak." Elias's gaze shifted. The woman sat by the fire, her injured arm propped on a folded blanket. She met his eyes, guilt flickering across her features. "Forgive. I repay if I can." Just children need food. Elias grunted, but the sharpness in his chest softened. He set his axe aside and ladled a bowl for himself. Name. The woman bowed her head slightly. Mei Lin. He studied her in the firelight. Thin, weary, but her spine straight, her gaze steady. There was quiet strength in her, the kind forged in hardship. She spoke again, haltingly. We come from California. Husband work railroad. He die. We go east, hope for better. But, her eyes clouded, shadows of memory she dared not voice. Bad men come. They kill. We run. The children froze, listening. Wei's jaw tightened. Mei Lin pressed her lips together, hiding pain. Elias stirred the porridge slowly. He had lived long enough to know the cruelty of men. The mountains, for all their dangers, were honest. Men were not. You can't stay here, he said roughly. These mountains'll kill children before spring. Closest town's 2 days south. There's miners, doctors. You should head there. Wei looked up, shoulders stiff. We can work. I can chop wood. June can carry water. Mama can sew. Please, mister. Just one more night. The boy's voice cracked slightly, but his gaze never wavered. Elias turned away, poking the fire to hide the storm inside him. His wife's voice whispered in memory, Eli, your heart's too big for these mountains. Someday it'll be your saving, or your ruin. That evening, he found himself laying extra pelts by the hearth. Don't want you freezing, he muttered. Little Lien crawled into his lap without asking, curling like a kitten against his chest. Elias froze, unsure whether to push her away. But when her small hand clutched his shirt and her breath warmed against him, he stayed still. Something long buried cracked open inside him. One night had already become 2. Chapter 3. The Answer That Changed Everything. By the 3rd day, Mei Lin's fever worsened. Her wound, red and swollen, throbbed with infection. She tried to sew a torn shirt for Elias, but the needle shook in her hand. You need a doctor, Elias said firmly, taking the cloth from her. That arm's no good. Infection'll spread. Mei Lin shook her head violently, fear flashing. No doctor. If we go to town, they see us. The men, they look. Who? Elias pressed. Her lips trembled before she spoke. The ones who killed my husband. They follow. They want me. If we go where men are, they find us. Elias's jaw tightened. He had lived years avoiding the world's cruelty. But now that cruelty had followed this woman and her children to his very door. That night, after the children slept, Mei Lin stirred weakly. Her voice was little more than a whisper. Thank you, Mountain Man. Tomorrow, we leave. I cannot bring danger to your home. Just tell me. Her eyes, dark with fear yet bright with hope, searched his face. Can we stay one night more? The question was simple, but it carried all her heart. Elias looked at her long, silent. He thought of the empty years, the grave he'd dug long ago, the winters with no sound but the wind. Then he thought of the small head that had rested against his chest, the boy who had stood proud despite hunger, the woman who had carried 3 children through hell to his doorstep. Finally, he set aside his rifle and spoke, his voice steady. You ain't leaving. Not tomorrow. Not the day after. You and them young uns, you stay here. As long as you need. This is your home now. Mei Lin's lips parted, her breath catching. Tears glistened, though she tried to hide them. But why? You owe us nothing. Elias reached out, laying his calloused hand over hers, gentle as snow on cedar. Maybe I needed you as much as you needed me. The fire cracked softly between them. Outside, the storm howled. But inside, a new warmth bloomed, fragile, fierce, unbreakable. Elias Boone, once a man of silence and solitude, had found a reason to fight again. And when the men who hunted Mei Lin finally came up the mountain, they would find not a widow and her children alone, but a mountain man who had chosen family over loneliness. And Elias Boone was a man the wilderness had shaped hard as iron. What began as a desperate knock for one night had become something none of them expected, a promise, unspoken but eternal.